Thank you, Charlie. Actually, I prepared the PowerPoint, but I decided just recently not to go with that. But maybe I just ask you for some slides. But while preparing for the presentation at 4 o'clock in the morning, this morning, I tried to recall my reflections on two Old Testament stories about disaster, Nehemiah and Joseph. In the story of Joseph, there was a drought, and it's preparedness. Remember, he mobilized the entire kingdom to save in preparation for upcoming drought. And he saved a lot of lives, including those of his fellow Jews. And in the case of Nehemiah, the entire city was overrun. The walls were burned to the ground. And it's a rebuild. A lot of us are into that right now also. We do rebuild. But as I was reflecting, I observed in both stories, Christians were leading the response. They were not just participating, they were leading. And questions also rose while reflecting this morning. Who actually brought Joseph to where he was at the time? Was it his brothers? But when I read the story, it was actually in reply to the question of his brothers, don't be apologetic. It was not you. God meant me to be here. And so it begs the question again, why are we also in disaster situations, the church or the faith-based organizations? Why now? Why are we discussing solidarity? And also the same story in Nehemiah. He was actually leading. He was able to convince a lot of people. In fact, when you read chapter 3, not chapter 1 and 2, chapter 3, the most commonly used phrase in that chapter is, next to him, the men of rebuild. Then next to him, they rebuilt this portion. And next to that portion, the family of built again. Next to him, next to him, next to him. So there are two main observations. One, I think, and I suggest that Christians during disasters should not only participate, but should also lead. And why lead? And I think it has something to do with our devotion speaker about how this morning. It's because I think that Christians should make God real during disaster situations. And I think that is the only important. It's not promoting the organization. It's not even promoting the methodology or promoting the program, but making sure that God is real in a disaster situation. So from that lens, that is always my perspective, because during the Sendong response, I was not part of the construction. My role was how to engage the general public. And I think the reason also why we need to engage the general public is so that these people would also realize the reality of God in disaster. So it's not just because we have this standard or policy on public engagement. No, I think that's not just the reason, but simply because it's being, if I may quote my first ever Christian book that I read many years ago, I think it was in 1977, John White, The Fight. As Christians, our main function is to become a signpost, always pointing to the right direction. Not pointing to the organization, not pointing to the program, nor pointing to the donor, or nor pointing to the methodology, but pointing to the right person, and that is Jesus. And again, there's this saying that says, calling is when the deepest joy of my heart meets the greatest need of the world. And during disaster, what do you suppose is the greatest need of people affected by disaster? Yes, house, food, but I think it's, again, the Lord is the greatest need of people affected by disaster. So, from that context, we develop programs that would ensure people to be involved, or a community-wide involvement in our programs. I am at a disadvantage because my tongue knows Tagalog very much. English is just, I need to translate my thought processes from Tagalog to English. So please bear with me. Continue. These are just some of our activities during relief, and you'll get a copy of this, during recovery and mitigation and preparedness. But this is not a presentation. The question is, how do we implement this and at the same time involve the entire community? Okay. For example, we have shelter and housing damage and needs assessment. In fact, Bishop Bong Udang and the members of the Kidern in Cagayan de Oro, they were the very first partners of Habitat who assisted us in the assessment of families needing housing. Saan po sila Bishop Udang dito? They're not here. They're doing assessment right now. Okay. Next slide. And the underlined word, phrase, seeking to put God's love into action, Habitat for Humanity brings people together. This is my main concern in Sendong, in Arm, and in Typhoon Pablo affected areas. How do we put people together? So our first goal is to make sure that God is known or introduced to the community. And the only way to do that is the posture of prayer. The Lord taught us to, the first line, hallow your name. The pronoun used there is your. And it was the verb as imperative mood. It's a command. You hallow your name in disaster situations. Okay? And societal involvement and on being signposts, please. Go ahead. This is just the, go back please. Yeah, this is the map of Cagayan de Oro. The blue one is the river. The light green is the flooded area in December 2011. Next, please. Go ahead. Okay. These are just some of the fast facts. 737 deaths, 7,000 totally damaged houses, and so on and so forth. And when Charlie decided to go to CDO, Cagayan de Oro, we had no funds. In fact, when I joined, I resigned from World Vision, and because Habitat invited me to be a part of Habitat, and after joining, they told me, oh, by the way, Dabs, we are not sure if we can give you salary for the next 2 months. That was true. That was true. So when Charlie came in November, we had a strategic planning, and we said we need to go back to the basics. And the basic is about putting God's room in all our plans. We cannot plan small plans because we can manage that. We need to plan ambitious plans so that there is enough room for a miracle to happen. So we decided to go for 6,000, and I think just days after making that conscious decision, without no money at all in our hands, these two groups called us, and DSWD said, we will give you funding for 3,000 houses. And San Miguel Corporation also pledged, actually gave us funding for 3,000 houses. That's 6,000 houses, funded, even before we sent the entire team to Cagayan de Oro. And we also received funds for shelter repair kits. Next, please. And these are the breakdown of volunteers that we've had in Cagayan de Oro. For schools, there are about 11,000 volunteers, business groups, local government units, civic groups. This includes Rotary, Lions Club, etc. Government offices include DSWD. They do volunteer also. That just not because this part of their work, but they do volunteer in our weekend builds. Media groups, I challenge them. Can you not just cover the event, but also build actual houses by your colleagues? So they were our regular volunteers. And we have several foreign volunteers as well. And Habitat, including our paid workers, during day off, they would continue to work. Or even during special builds, they would volunteer, continue working with no payment at all. So all in all, it's about 20,000 volunteers. Okay. Next, please. Okay. When there is fire, we call for the fire station, and they send the fire truck. Okay? But when we are devastated by typhoon, floods, and the roof of our homes are affected, whom do you call? The Ghostbusters? We don't, there's no single unit whom we can call and repair our house. So we decided, why don't we develop a hammer on wheels? A hammer on wheels is, it literally means Habitat mobile emergency repair truck. So it is a truck, it's a wing band full of carpentry tools. It has a built-in yung generator. We are also dreaming that soon it will also carry a water filtration system so that in any disaster situation, we can just use that truck and produce safe and drinkable water. And it has a powerhouse which can also clean houses full of mud. The tools are mostly power tools, power saw, power drill. It's all so that we can repair houses in a single day. And the good thing, we did not pay anything for this. DSWD so liked the idea, they would like to fund hammer on wheels in every city. Hopefully, they will fulfill their commitment to do this. So, for example, I think we have one in Cagayan de Oro. So we can use this in Cagayan de Oro. We're also planning to have this one also in Davao, in every key cities also in Metro Manila. We can use this before disaster strikes as pre-disaster activity to repair as part of preparedness and mitigation. We can also use this for post-disaster situations. These are just common sense program. But this is just a program. How do you use this and engage the entire community? Next slide, please. Okay. We use this for typhoon. We build, we repair, and proactively repair houses so that they will become typhoon resistant. Not typhoon proof. There is no such thing as typhoon proof, but typhoon resistant. By simply, for example, did you know that when you, the trusses, when you make it 30% the degrees, it becomes more stronger. It becomes stronger. These are simple tips that we give out to the families, and they can actually retrofit their structures. So we call this pre-disaster house retrofitting as Ayos Bahay, Ayos Buhay. Okay? How do we operationalize this? The church can actually participate. Let's say our church is located in a flood-prone or typhoon-prone area, and we know, for example, the families whose houses are very weak in terms of structure. You can call our attention, we can schedule a visit, we can bring our hammer on wheels in that barangay and stay there for, let's say, 3 days or even 5 days, and just start repairing through bayanihan, and at the same time using our skilled workers, using the tools inside the truck, and leave the barangay whose previous houses were weak, now prepared for disaster. During September to December, I heard, Pag-asa said, there's about 9 typhoons going to visit the Philippines from September to December this year. I think it's a good idea for us to visit your place if your place is typhoon prone. And we can use this. And, okay. We also mobilize volunteers. For example, in Cagayan de Oro, just recently, we brought this truck in one barangay, I think it's in Kamamanan, and we just opened the van, and then when the people saw all the tools, immediately they told us, oh, our roof is leaking, do you have sealants? Yes, we do have sealants. Sealant is only 29 pesos. And your church can actually, in your area, can actually help families with leaking roofs. You can actually repair them. Very simple, very not expensive. Okay. Another case study, for example. I have noticed, not only in Cagayan de Oro, that a lot of organizations fund preparedness training. Okay? But what is the methodology during trainings? You call, let's say, 2 or 3 barangays, organize them, and then tell them on that such date, there is going to be a big training on preparedness. We have invited powerful speakers. You pay for the venue, even bigger than this one. You have good sound system. But let me ask you, normally, who are the people who would attend such trainings? Barangay captains, barangay kagawad, those people who have the capacity to pay for tricycles, vehicles. But let me tell you, when we design trainings like this, did we not plan to target people who are vulnerable from the community? Normally, in a community, the vulnerable families are families with small children, families with sickly children or elderly who cannot walk, families with no males inside the family, therefore they cannot just leave the house anytime. So the intention was good, but the methodology is often not the appropriate one to provide that sharing the knowledge about preparedness. So what our volunteers started to plan, by the way, this plan came from them. They said, why don't we bring the knowledge right at their doorstep? And I challenged them, we don't have a budget for this. No problem. We'll just bring the knowledge right at their doorstep. So how did we do it? So the target was targeting vulnerable families in vulnerable areas. Okay? And it's going to be one barangay or one community each month. And it should be volunteer-led, they said. And we will just use flip charts. No PowerPoints. Flip charts. And they said, we will utilize the best drawers in the engineering department of each school in this city. And when we talk to the Dean of Engineering, they are so glad to be a part of something very, very innovative, not expensive, and it has even relevance to their subject, engineering. So the engineering students started drawing and sharing tips on how to improve houses in preparation for typhoons or floods. Okay? So far, we have not shelled out any single centavo for the program. It's all volunteer-led. So they started drawing the flip charts, and I think in Davao, they even asked NCCC, a mall, a shopping mall, to provide them a space inside the mall so that students coming from different schools entering the mall can sign up. And they just used, you know, the party hats as part of a common. If you sign up, you can have this picture taking using our party hats. So it's going to be fun. It's all community volunteer-led. And next month, we will target MAA, Barangay MAA, very near NCC Mall, to provide this sharing knowledge at your doorstep concept. Okay? And then they started asking NSTP, the schools. NSTP, by the way, is a program by the DepEd and CHED, that every college student should participate in community building volunteer work. So we just simply asked, oh, we have this program, it's school-led, student-led, volunteer-led. Why don't you ask your NSTP students for 3 hours only, once a month, to be a part of this movement? So the first project was to go to a barangay, to a community, with all 500 volunteers. So we decided to break them into groups of 50s. So one group would go to one street and knock at each door and tell them about, using the flip charts, simple ways to be prepared. And there was no cost at all. Common sense programming that involves community. And what is the value of doing this way? While actually Habitat can do it, but I think the value is the students, as they grow, would find this experience very valuable, and it would guide them in their later years in terms of work, and decision-making, and even career. And they speak the language, it's fun, and the people in the barangay are not threatened by highfalutin words that we use often during trainings. And it's 5 to 10 volunteers per group. So we do not allow only one person knocking at the door, but 5 to 10 people. So it's going to be fun. Some said we even started singing, no, inside. And so it was very Filipino. Filipinos like that. So next slide, please. And then case study number 3. Habitat used to have what we call the youth build. It's an annual thing wherein we plan for, let's say, 6 months ahead of time, and we invite schools and youth groups to participate in what we call a youth build. Maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people, volunteers, converging in one Habitat site and start building houses. In my experience in Cagayan de Oro, when we start building at 6 o'clock in the morning, usually the level is, let's say, just 1 hollow blocks. After 3 hours, by 9 o'clock, the house would be about waist high already, or window level. In just 3 hours, we only need about 10 volunteers, unskilled volunteers, to work for 3 solid hours, and they can actually erect the box, we call it the box, at window level. So just imagine if you have 1,000 volunteers, that's about 100 houses. In just 3 hours, they can erect it. But then again, it's just a one-time, once-a-year engagement. It's not continuing involvement. So we decided in Cagayan de Oro, why don't we, instead of just doing one youth build, why don't we start doing a weekend build? So every Saturday, since I think January of 2012, up to the present, when you go to Cagayan de Oro, habitat sites, because we have about 14 sites right now, we do have what we call weekend build. And during the first few weeks in 2012, media was involved, so they would invite me or they would invite the leaders of the volunteers, the students. And students, of course, are very excited to talk inside the radio stations. And they would say, for this coming Saturday, we are going to hold a barkada build. A barkada is, how do you translate that in English? Gang. It's going to be a gang build. So the first 500 volunteers should belong to a gang of five persons, 5 friends. A gang of 5 ladies will be paired to a gang of 5 men. And that makes it very interesting for our volunteers. Sometimes you see people in the heavy side, so would also volunteer. So sometimes we call it the bill build. Bill build is bill build. Belly. So we call it bill build. So this coming Saturday, we're calling for volunteers, and we will accept, we call this the bill builds. Okay? Or sometimes the family build. We will only accept families, father, mother, children, for this build. Or sometimes the clan build. The grandfather, the father, and the son. So you would see the son, the small kids, bringing pails of water or cement, and the father mixing the cement, and the grandfather laying down the hollow blocks. And of course, the women. You can be very creative in doing this, and we've been doing this in Cagayan de Oro. And sometimes we even call a pastor's build. Then we call all churches, you need to set an example, pastor's build. We even have a media build. And there was one time, I remember, when Pinoy was about to come, and we were about to turn over the first 1,000 houses, and then we saw we are lagging behind in terms of digging the septic tank. And it needs hard labor. So we went to the radio again, and we said, this time, this is going to be a septic tank digging build. So we need able-bodied men to come. And lo and behold, the first group who came was the Association of, no, not bodybuilders, but you'll be surprised. The people who responded to this call was the Association of Security Guards. Coming from the night shift, they came in before 6 o'clock, still wearing their uniforms. Some were riding in motorcycles, 3, 4 people in just one bike. Then they started, getting out of their uniform without breakfast, started digging septic tanks. It's so powerful. And you don't need to talk about God about when you do that. When you provide opportunities for people to experience God in their presence, and they talk about it. When volunteers, students see security guards coming from shift, it was the most powerful stories. They would continue sharing this with their classmates, teachers, and it becomes viral. It was in California who has that record, and there's about 6,000 plus volunteers, less than 6,100. They actually surpassed that with 6,300 plus volunteers in just one day. Later on, you will see the pictures. And next, please. And this is another case study. This is not yet happening, but let me propose this project with this group. And remember my point about the reflections on Nehemiah and Joseph, that Christians lead the response, not just participate. Just imagine, in Zamboanga right now, there are about 16,000 families in the evacuation sites. It's good that they said soon they'll be going back to their homes. But according to Ms. Dinky Suliman of DSWD, on the average, any group, church, school, or government offices, we spend about 250 pesos per family per day for food packs. Does it sound right, the computation? More or less 250? Good for 3 meals for a family of, let's say, 5 or 6. And how much is that for this number of families a day? That's about 4 million pesos a day. And for 1 month, we need 120 million pesos to maintain 16,000 families in an evacuation site. I think the media or the NGOs have been so successful in convincing the giving body, the giving public, that the only valid response during the first few days is giving food packs. Imagine if we can transfer families from evacuation site to their homes by building their homes during the first 3 or even 5 days. They don't need to stay in evacuation site that long. We can actually make a difference and even save a lot of money instead of, preparing food packs. And these are the computations. For 1 month, we need to spend about 7,500 families, 7,500 pesos per family for 1 month. The shelter repair kit that we distribute is only 7,000. In Compostela Valley, a lot of them have been in temporary shelters, bunk houses. It's still that it's not their homes. They're not comfortable living in those bunk houses or even tents. And for so many months, we've spent already millions of pesos for food packs. But just imagine if in solidarity, we say there are about 30,000+ churches, evangelical churches. If one church can proactively decide to reserve 1 pack, 1 SRK or shelter repair kit each year, not every month, just say we're committed to give 1 shelter repair kit each year. I already computed that for you. That's only 134 pesos a week. So, we can actually tell the President or Secretary Dinky Suliman, and we can tell them, Secretary Dinky Suliman, the Evangelical Church can shoulder the repair of up to 10,000 families each year. Use your money for other things. Each year, the Evangelical Church has seen it fit to respond and take the leadership in building houses or repairing houses immediately, not to wait after 3 months, but immediately we can repair. We have the capability, we have the funds, we have the network, and we will repair houses immediately after 3 or 5 days. I think that's one solid expression of solidarity. So they're already waving at me. So just to run down, give me 1 minute, last 2 minutes. These are just some of the pictures. These are the houses that we're now building in one site in Opol. In partnership with the church, they donated the land. Next. Okay. Go ahead. These are different sites. In Calaanan 2B, in Calaanan 3, all with the participation of volunteers. In Indahag 2, Taguanaw, again, participated by the church. These are the different NGOs from government, from churches. Okay, this is the sample of weekend builds. Go ahead. Project 6,000. We have 3 growing. We have foreigners. Okay. The septic tank. President of the Philippines, I mean. United Philippines. Philippine Air Force, Philippine National Police, the Fire Bureau, schools. Okay. We have celebrities, Karil, Crystal Bello, Miriam Kembao visiting the sites, silly groups, faith groups.